throw that arrogant notion that we are the sole pinnacle of evolution into the trash bin, because the history you were taught is actually just a sedative meticulously brewed to conceal a brutal truth. You think humanity moved upward in a straight line? From dwelling in caves to smartphones? Too naive. Look down at your feet. Beneath those layers of soil, at the bottom of that pitch-black ocean, is not silence. It is a colossal graveyard of 6 civilizations that once flourished and were completely wiped out before we even had the chance to name them. Blocks of stone weighing hundreds of tons, sliced as cleanly as butter using Stone Age technology, metal gears nestled neatly inside million-year-old coal seams. The academic world calls these anomalies, calls them coincidences. Coincidence, my ass. No nature accidentally creates things like that. The truth is, Earth does not nurture us. It resets us. Fire, ice, floods. The cycle of destruction has occurred 6 times, and the survivors, our ancestors, had to rebuild from the ashes in extreme terror, carrying with them shattered fragments of memory that today we call mythology. We are not the pioneers. We are the 7th civilization, standing on the corpses of fallen giants. And the only question worth asking tonight isn't, who were they? But rather, what killed them? And when is it coming back for us? Put your human ego aside and brace yourself, because the floor beneath your feet is about to crack open. Welcome back to the darkest corners of the past. I am Zorro, and this is Dark History. Look at the tiny, orderly world you are living in. The straight timelines from apes holding sticks to engineers building skyscrapers. Everything is moving forward, right? Ceaseless progress. Do you feel safe with that story? Good. That is exactly its purpose. It is a sedative prescribed to all of mankind to keep you calm, to keep you going to work, paying taxes, and believing that we are the pinnacle of creativity. But now, humor me. Turn off that default mode in your brain. Imagine that the truth is messier, darker, and much more fragile than any archaeology professor dares to admit on television. Because what is buried right beneath our feet, under the concrete of cities, under the old-growth forests, and at the bottom of the deep oceans, is a bloody indictment. It screams that humanity did not just rise once. We are a repetitive effort, a continuous reboot project. We have risen 7 times, and the 6 times before that, we were wiped out, completely, without mercy. The first clue doesn't come from dusty old books or the whispers of monks. It comes from the ground itself, and it comes like a slap in the face of mainstream science. Look at these things. Suddenly, across the planet, large-scale architecture appears, complete. No primitive prototypes, no slow evolution, no apprentice mason phase. Only perfect engineering dropped with a boom into the timeline, like someone tossing a supercar into the middle of the Stone Age. Ancient calendars predict celestial cycles with chilling accuracy. Megalithic structures align with the stars as if built by those who had observed the sky for tens of thousands of years, not just a few generations. But according to the story you were taught in school, these builders had only just learned how to sharpen stones. They were hunter-gatherers who had just settled down. Can you believe it? That story, it's more full of holes than a target at a shooting range. The closer you step to the edge of accepted history, the more the foundation beneath your feet begins to crumble. In barren deserts, ruins stand towering with no culture claiming them as their own. On mountains so high the thin air makes it hard to breathe, the hardest granite rocks are cut, drilled with the precision of industrial lasers. Beneath the oceans, cities lie arranged in perfect geometry, waiting for brave divers to discover them. And most terrifying of all, deep beneath layers of soil older than any known civilization, things appear that simply should not exist. Pieces of technology sealed within geological strata where only nature should be allowed to be present. What do mainstream researchers call them? Anomalies, chronological errors, cultural misunderstandings. How cute. They use technical jargon to cover up the panic. But those abnormalities keep appearing stubbornly, and they all whisper the same thing. Someone was here before us. Something powerful, something organized, something that ended so abruptly, so brutally, that it left almost nothing behind but questions that no one wants to answer. What could completely wipe out a civilization so advanced that even its name evaporated from human memory? Fire alone couldn't do it. Floods alone aren't enough. Ice or darkness alone wouldn't suffice. But a sequence, a symphony of all four elements, a global reset triggered by cosmic forces more ancient than mankind? Oh yes, that is possible. And it happened. Not once, not twice, but 6 times. Throw away the concept of a straight line. Our world is a cycle, a cruel loop. Civilizations rise, climb to the peak of knowledge and power, flourish brilliantly, and then collapse so violently that memory itself shatters. The survivors? They scattered into jungles, high mountains, and caves, carrying fragments of a knowledge they no longer understood. They reverted to a primitive state for survival. And when the world stabilized again after thousands of years, their descendants, our very own ancestors, began to build again from scratch, naively believing they were the beginning, while in reality, they were just the remnants. Suddenly, the myths make terrifying sense, don't they? Stories of the great flood across the world, stories of fire falling from the sky, gods teaching humanity agriculture, mathematics, astronomy, skills they shouldn't have possessed on their own. My friends, these are not the imaginations of ancient people sitting around a campfire. They are traumatic memories. They are collective PTSD passed down through oral tradition for thousands of years. The faint echoes of a glorious world wiped out in an instant. If this is true, then we are living in the 7th civilization, and the evidence of the 6 worlds before us still flickers at the bottom of the ocean, under the deserts, inside the mountains, and even in our own DNA. Evidence that no government or academic institution wants to bring to light, because the moment they do, the world will understand the brutal truth. We are not at the peak of human progress. We are standing on ruins, on a colossal graveyard of eras that reached higher than we dare imagine. And if 6 worlds collapsed before us, the next question is unavoidable. It hangs over our heads like a guillotine blade. Why did they collapse? And what horror awaits us in the shadows of the next cycle? Welcome back. Are you still there? Or has your fragile reality started to crack? If the previous part was theory, this part is the exhibits. We are going to talk about the stubborn things that archaeologists call sharpstones inside the velvet shoe of history. They limp because of them. They are in pain because of them. But they would rather endure the pain than dare to take off the shoe to see what the hell is inside. We are talking about out-of-place artifacts, OOP arts. Objects that brazenly appear in places where, according to all rules of time and space, they are not allowed to exist. Let's start with coal. That pitch-black fuel we burn every day. Coal forms slowly, from decaying forests compressed under terrible pressure over hundreds of millions of years. At that time, humans weren't even a concept. Dinosaurs didn't even rule yet. So, explain this to me. Why do miners pull out finely machined blocks of metal frozen dead center inside coal seams? Not raw ore, mind you. I'm talking about cubes with sharp edges, gear wheels, brass cups with delicate engravings. Nature is a great artist, I agree. But nature doesn't know how to use a lathe. Nature doesn't create perfect 90-degree angles. And certainly, geological pressure cannot randomly arrange iron molecules into a gear. Someone made them. Someone dropped them. And that someone lived, breathed, and built machines in an era when your textbooks insist Earth was full of nothing but ferns and giant insects. Look at this. A hammer. Iron head, wooden handle, locked tight inside Cretaceous limestone. Mainstream scientists will say, oh, it's just minerals precipitating quickly. But when that hammerhead is taken for metallurgical analysis, surprise. The iron has a purity that no foundry in the 19th century could achieve. It doesn't rust. It contains strange alloys. It lies there, like an arrogant challenge. I am here. I was here before you knew how to bang two rocks together. Now explain that, you bunch of smartasses. And that isn't the only case. Things resembling spark plugs found in volcanic ash dating back hundreds of thousands of years. Screws embedded in quartz. These aren't dating errors. The geological context is clear as day. These objects are industrial waste from a forgotten era. You see, one or two might be called coincidence or a hoax. But when this pattern repeats across every continent, when Russia, the US, China, Africa all report similar things, a blurry picture starts to emerge, and it isn't pretty at all. But if you think the land is weird enough, hold your breath and dive underwater with me. The ocean is where the biggest secrets are hidden. Sonar scans reveal things that make geologists break out in a cold sweat. Perfect linear grids, massive stone blocks fitted tightly together, stone staircases arranged in geometry, wide roads leading into nothingness. The official statements? It's natural tectonic formation. Laughs loudly. Natural, which nature carves square intersections on a platform miles wide? Which nature builds harbor walls perfectly aligned with constellations in the sky? The earth remembers everything. A gear here, a sunken city there. They are like debris from a giant shipwreck, a world that was wiped out, but left traces small enough to escape the catastrophe, yet stubborn enough to survive millions of years. But the hardest part of this story to swallow isn't the artifacts. No, it is our reaction to them. Do you think when these things are found, scientists pop champagne? Not at all. Universities publish notes, then hurriedly retract them. Museums throw these objects into dark, dusty storage rooms, unnumbered, unlabeled. Specimens suddenly get lost when sent for testing. Excavation sites are cordoned off by the military for national security reasons. The pattern of disappearance mirrors exactly the pattern of discovery. Why? Why be so afraid? Why hide evidence of ancient technology? The simple answer is inconvenience. These objects are troublemakers. They threaten to kick down the academic ivory tower that thousands of PhDs have spent their lives building. But the deeper answer, it is much more disturbing. If previous civilizations possessed technology equal to or even far beyond ours, and if they were still completely annihilated, then your sense of safety is just an illusion. The stability of this world is a lie. What happened to them could happen to us at any moment. Admitting their existence means admitting our own death sentence. That is why they hide it. Better to believe in a misdated artifact than to face the truth that we are standing on the edge of an abyss. But the more they hide, the more haunting the question becomes. How advanced were they? And what was powerful enough to turn those glorious empires into dust, leaving only spark plugs stuck in rock? In the next part, we won't look at rocks anymore. We will look at time, at the deadly rhythm of the universe, at the programmed cycles of destruction. Because, my friends, history is not a straight road leading to paradise. It is a meat grinder. And that grinder, it is starting to turn again. Look at the chart your history teacher loves. A straight line sloping upward. From caves to skyscrapers. From sticks to iPhones. Beautiful, neat, and a lie. The truth? Civilization is not a persistent mountain climb. It is a wave, an erratic heartbeat. Rise, collapse, silence. Then rise again, collapse, silence. Repeat. We, the arrogant ones of the 21st century, are merely those riding the seventh wave. And believe me, this ocean is not gentle. Earth is not a gentle mother nurturing her brood. It is an old beast, cranky and temperamental. It tilts. It wobbles like a drunkard in the cosmos. It breathes out scorching heat and inhales bone-chilling cold in cycles. Ice sheets advance to crush continents, then retreat. Sea levels drop to reveal land bridges, then rise hundreds of feet to drown everything. Every time this planet sneezes, life has to scramble for the handkerchief. If there were civilizations before us, do you think their ruins would be lying out on a golf course for you to find? No. They were crushed under tons of ice. They were buried at the bottom of the ocean where bustling coasts used to be. They were baked under layers of volcanic ash meters thick. Science calls this abrupt climate transition. Every 100,000 years there is a cleanup. Biologists call it a population bottleneck, a time when humanity almost went extinct, with only a few thousand survivors clinging to life. And here's the interesting thing. Immediately after those dark gaps, suddenly, boom, megalithic architecture appears. Complex mathematics appears. One moment our ancestors are sharpening flints. The next moment they are building structures aligned with the stars that make even NASA engineers scratch their heads. Do you really believe they figured it all out on their own overnight? Or were they remembering? Or were they guided by the remnants of a lost era? If science is too dry for you, listen to the bedtime stories. We call them myths, but actually, they are black boxes recording disaster data. Across the world, from Australian Aboriginals to tribes in Peru, from Sumerian clay lands to Nordic frost, these cultures never met. They had no internet, no phones. So why do they all tell the same terrifying story? In Peru, they tell of a darkness that lasted so long you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. In Australia, the oldest songs describe the sky raining fire. The Sumerians wrote of a flood that washed away cities. Pacific Islanders sing of the ocean rising like a sentient monster. The Norse tremble before Fimbulwinter, the winter as long as death. They weren't writing fantasy literature. They were describing a crime scene. These legends match perfectly with geological data. Ice cores in Antarctica and Greenland show thin layers of black ash, traces of eruptions that blotted out the sun. The Younger Dryas event, the Toba eruption, meteor impacts, climate changes in the snap of a finger, temperatures freefall, light extinguishes. This is the collective traumatic memory of the human species. We are the descendants of those who saw the apocalypse and survived to tell the tale. The scariest part isn't the destruction. It is the speed of it. The world doesn't end with a long whimper. It ends with a shock. No slow decay. One layer of soil is peace. The next is chaos. A comprehensive, hard drive format. The survivors ran to the high mountains. They crawled into caves. They carried fragments of knowledge, but over a few generations, knowledge turned into ritual, science turned into religion, and history turned into myth. They told of brilliant cities that were swallowed up, of gods who possessed machines that hummed, of towers that glowed without fire. We laugh at them. We call them superstitious. But perhaps they were trying to warn us in the only language left after the collapse. If Earth has reset 6 times, then where are the physical traces of those 6 worlds? If fire and ice wiped the surface clean, then there is only one place safe enough to hide these secrets. A place that we modern humans have only explored 5% of: the ocean. Beneath that deep blue water is not just fish and coral. It is a museum of great failures. And in the final part, we will dive down there. We will open the doors of the forbidden cities. If you want to hide a body, you throw it in the river. But if you want to hide the body of an entire world, you melt the ice at the poles. We are in what geologists call the continental shelf, but 100,000 years ago, this was humanity's home turf. This was where our ancestors walked, hunted, and built. When the Ice Age ended, the sea didn't just rise a little. It swallowed millions of square miles of land. It erased old coastlines, drowned fertile valleys, and swept away everything in its path. And when we, with modern sonar technology and insane courage, finally dare to look down there, what we see aren't random coral reefs. Look closely. Don't let eyes accustomed to lies deceive you. Across the Pacific, deep under the Indian Ocean, and scattered among the island chains from Asia to Australia, there are things sleeping. They rise from the seabed like the ghosts of forgotten cities. This is not the work of waves. Waves do not cut stone into terraces as straight as a ruler. Waves do not fit giant stone blocks with such precision that, here's the old story again, a razor blade cannot fit between them. Divers have found staircases, giant stone steps leading down into the deeper darkness, where pressure can crush you. They found flat squares larger than modern stadiums. All these things lie exactly where dry land used to be. They lie there, silent, cold, challenging every geological explanation the textbooks try to stuff into your head. And the world's reaction? Oh, that's just natural rock fracturing according to interesting geological laws. Really? Nature has a habit of building perfect 90-degree angles? Nature likes urban planning? Don't be so naive. The real reason no government, no organization wants to admit these ruins isn't because they lack evidence. It is because of fear, a primal fear. Because if we admit those walls at the bottom of the sea are man-made, we must admit that the people who built them were wiped out. Not a slow decline, but wiped out. Instantly. By a force that we, with all our satellites and nuclear bombs, are still completely helpless against. We return to the first question. Why? Why must history be a lie? Because the truth is too fragile. The stability of modern civilization is built on the belief that we are special, that we are the peak, that we are safe. But the ruins at the bottom of the ocean, the iron hammers in limestone, the ancient star maps, they all scream a different truth. We are not the peak. We are the survivors. Or worse, we are the descendants of the runaways. The pattern is too clear. A rise, a collapse, a silence lasting millennia, and then a rise again. If this hypothesis is true, we are living in the 7th civilization. And our 6 brothers before us? They are lying beneath your feet, beneath your wheels, and at the bottom of the pool where you go on vacation. What ended them? Was it water? Was it fire? Or was it something they themselves unleashed? Maybe they were like us, arrogant, overconfident, believing their technology could tame nature, believing they were immortal. And then, click, lights out. ancient stories are not myths. They are warnings. They are desperate messages sent from the past to the future, written in the only language that could survive the collapse. Fear. We are standing on the ruins of giants, and the sky is starting to change color again. The sea level is stirring. The earth is starting to shiver. The cycle doesn't care about your stock market. It doesn't care about your national borders. It only cares about balance. The balance that Mother Nature initiated from the very first days of the universe. Knock, knock. Are you still there? It seems like in the previous parts we went through a lot of hypotheses, so now let's get into the specific evidence. The first name mentioned is Atlantis. Our story doesn't start with some crazy prophet, but ironically, it starts with science. In 1858, imagine a foggy England and gentlemen in top hats. Among them was Philip Sclater, a zoologist who probably preferred looking at bones to looking at human faces. Sclater had a problem named lemur. He found fossils of this tiny creature in Madagascar, in Africa, and even all the way in India. What was the problem? Lemurs can't swim. They hate water. So how the hell could they appear in lands separated by thousands of miles of ocean? They couldn't buy plane tickets, and they certainly didn't know how to build ships. Sclater's logic was very simple, a deadly simplicity. If they couldn't swim across the sea, then the sea must have disappeared. He boldly declared, "There was once a giant land bridge, a supercontinent connecting Africa and India." And to honor the little lemurs that helped him reach enlightenment, he named that land Lemuria. At that time, this idea sounded reasonable. Even Charles Lyell, the father of modern geology, nodded in approval. They believed that continents rose and sank like slow pistons. Lemuria was born as a scientific solution to a biological problem. But that was when everything started sliding off the rails of sanity. 1888. 24 years after Sclater drew Lemuria on the scientific map, a Russian woman entered the game, Helena Blavatsky. She didn't care about lemurs. She cared about spirits, magic, and the secrets of the universe. Blavatsky was the co-founder of the Theosophical Society, and in her massive book, The Secret Doctrine, she turned Lemuria from a geological hypothesis into a metaphysical nightmare. According to Blavatsky, humanity did not evolve from monkeys. Oh no, that would be too mediocre. We are the product of a series of root races. And guess what? We currently are just the fifth small fry type. This is different from the order of civilizations we mentioned in the first part. Okay, according to Madame Blavatsky, the first race? Giant ghosts, floating like jellyfish in the air. The second race? Asexual. No men, no women. They reproduced by budding. Yes, you heard that right. They split themselves like bacteria. But the peak of madness lies in the third race, the Lemurian race. Forget the beautiful humans in Hollywood movies. Lemurians, as described by theosophists, were true monsters. They lived at the same time as dinosaurs, and to avoid being stomped on by pterosaurs, they also had to be gigantic. Picture this: a creature 3.5 to 4.5 meters tall, skin yellowish brown like fired clay, a face as flat as if someone smacked it with a frying pan, tiny cold eyes but set so far apart it was freakish, allowing them to look sideways like birds without turning their heads. That's not all. Their heads tilted sharply backward, limbs dangling long, reaching past their knees. And the priceless detail I want you to carve into your brain. In the early stages of this brilliant civilization, our great ancestors laid eggs. That's right, laid eggs. Try to imagine a 4-meter tall giant incubating a giant egg while watching dinosaurs run past. That is the image of Paradise Lost that Blavatsky wanted us to believe. From a hypothesis about monkey migration, Lemuria transformed into the homeland of egg-laying giants. But the story doesn't stop there. If you think Blavatsky was the only one with a rich imagination, then just wait. Because right after this, another man will appear and connect Lemuria to another lost continent, painting a global picture of destruction that you cannot find in history textbooks. Who is that guy? And what evidence did he find on ancient stone tablets? All will be revealed in the next part. If you thought Madame Blavatsky's egg-laying giants were the peak of absurdity, then hold on to your seats. Because right after this, we are going to meet James Churchward, a British writer who decided that one lost continent wasn't enough. He needed something bigger. In the late 19th century, Churchward stepped into the light not with dreams or ghosts, but with stone tablets. He claimed to have found translations from ancient tablets in India, called the Children of Mu. According to Churchward, these tablets didn't record curry recipes. They told of a dead civilization, a superpower with 60 million people. And its name was as brief and concise as a sigh. MU. Forget Atlantis. Churchward arrogantly declared that Atlantis was just a fake, a flawed version, or to put it gently, inspired by Mu. To him, Mu was the true cradle of humanity. Look at this map. According to Churchward and his colleague Augustus Le Plongeon, Mu was a land monster that swallowed the entire Pacific Ocean. It stretched from Hawaii in the north down to Easter Island in the east, and reached out its fingers to touch near Japan in the west. Sounds crazy, right? How could such a massive landmass disappear without a trace? But before you turn off the video and call me a rambler, look at the scars left on the surface of the sea. Scars that mainstream science is still scratching its head over. First stop, Japan. Off the coast of Yonaguni. Here, beneath the deep blue water, people found massive stone structures. Square steps, razor-sharp edges. We continue moving to Micronesia, to Nan Madol. This is a floating city built from giant volcanic basalt logs, weighing tons. Who built it? No one knows. How did they transport the stone? No one has a clue. But the scary part? Recent LiDAR technology scanned the area and discovered an extremely complex irrigation and drainage system. They had a modern drainage system before the ancient Greeks knew how to build public baths. A primitive society? I don't think so. And finally, the most undeniable proof, standing lonely in the middle of the ocean, Easter Island. This tiny island lies in the most middle-of-nowhere place in the world. Yet, it once sustained 12,000 people. Science says they paddled canoes thousands of miles across the ocean to get here. Sounds romantic and full of athletic spirit. But Churchward laughs in the face of that hypothesis. He poses a simpler question. Why paddle a boat if you can? Walk? If the continent of Mu existed, Easter Island wasn't an island. It was a mountain peak, a highland peak where the people of Mu lived. They didn't migrate there. They were already there. When the water rose, the continent sank, and the survivors were stranded on the mountaintop, what we call an island today. And here is the final twist that will make you shudder. The Polynesians on Easter Island worshipped a sun god. What was his name? Ra. On the other side of the world, in ancient Egypt, who did they worship? The sun god Ra. Two civilizations halfway around the globe from each other, with no internet, no phones, worshipping the same god with the same name? A random coincidence? In the world of Zorro here, there are no coincidences that innocent. These linguistic and religious similarities are whispering a terrifying truth. that they all originated from a common source, a great mother who drowned at the bottom of the sea. But if Mu and Lemuria were so great, so powerful, why did they disappear? What could wipe out 60 million people in the blink of an eye? The answer does not lie in the slowness of geology, but in a terrible fury of the universe. All the big names, Blavatsky, Churchward, or the geologists, even if they fight like cats and dogs about the location or shape of Lemuria, there is one common point they are forced to nod in agreement on: the end. It didn't end peacefully. There were no tearful goodbyes. It was an erasure, a brutal delete button pressed by the universe. The question isn't, did it sink, but what the hell drowned it? Let's turn the clock back 11,500 years, the Younger Dryas era. Earth was freezing, then suddenly warmed up abruptly. Giant ice sheets in the northern hemisphere melted as fast as an ice cream cone in the middle of a desert summer. Billions of tons of fresh water crashed down into the ocean. Sea levels rose madly, swallowing coastlines. This is the great flood that every culture, from the Bible, the Epic of Gilgamesh, to Mayan legends, mentions. Science calls it climate change. But conspiracy theorists whisper a more terrifying cause. Some say it was an asteroid. Others say the sun sneezed a giant plasma flare, stripping away Earth's protective magnetic field, cooking everything with radiation, or worse, a pole shift. Earth flipped over, north became south, and in that somersault, the continent of Lemuria crumbled like a biscuit. James Churchward described it like a heavy horror movie. Earthquakes shook, volcanoes erupted simultaneously, and tsunamis hundreds of meters high extinguished all life in just one night. The next morning, the sun rose over an empty ocean. But what if it wasn't an accident? What if it was a premeditated murder? There is a theory that gives me goosebumps, that Lemuria and Atlantis didn't die because of Mother Nature. They died because of each other. Please welcome our special guests, the Anunnaki, the ancient Sumerian gods, or as UFO enthusiasts call them, DNA manipulating aliens. According to controversial documents like the Chronicle of Akakor, Atlantis and Lemuria were two opposing factions in a prehistoric Cold War. Atlantis, under the manipulation of the Anunnaki, called the Sons of Belial, were greedy, wanted domination, wanted global colonization. Conversely, Lemuria were pacifists, wanting civilizations to develop freely. Atlantis ordered, "Kneel." Lemuria replied, "Never." And so, boom. We aren't talking about swords or bows and arrows. We are talking about a Stone Age version of Star Wars. The famous sleeping prophet Edgar Cayce, who accurately predicted the start of World War II, described Atlantis' technology in words that make modern engineers sweat. He spoke of firestones, giant crystals that harvested solar and earth energy, creating deadly beams. They powered airships, submarines, and even weapons of mass destruction. Cayce once said in 1939 that Atlantis would be found in Bimini in 1968. Everyone laughed at him. And then 1968 came, and people found the Bimini Road at the bottom of the sea in the Bahamas. Coincidence? Or did this old man really see the past? The war broke out around 10,468 BC. Atlantis used crystal weapons, scorching the atmosphere, altering the flow of rivers, and leveling mountains. Over 60 million Lemurians were wiped out. But Atlantis didn't win either. The excessive abuse of crystal energy destabilized the Earth's crust. The magnetic poles flipped. Their own weapons turned back to bite them. Atlantis sank into the Atlantic Ocean, leaving ruins like Stonehenge or the Egyptian pyramids as silent tombstones. Lemuria was destroyed. Atlantis collapsed. Earth became a desolate battlefield. But not everyone died. About 10,000 of the smartest Lemurians realized the end was coming. They didn't build ships. They didn't run up the hills. They went down. They burrowed deep into the earth, seeking shelter from the nuclear firestorm and floodwaters. They sought out massive cave systems beneath a sacred mountain in North America. And there, in eternal darkness, they rebuilt their empire. California, the land of Hollywood, of dreams, and of giants in white robes living inside a mountain? Welcome to Mount Shasta. To climbers, it is a challenge, but to mystery hunters, it is a vortex. Rumor has it that the boundary between dimensions here is as thin as cigarette paper. And deep beneath that layer of granite, the survivors of Lemuria are said to have built a new paradise, Telos. Forget damp caves full of bats. Telos is described as a 5-star city of light. No flickering fluorescent lights, just a soft glow radiating from the walls themselves. The residents here, over 2 meters tall, gliding like luxurious ghosts, and using crystal technology to do everything, from healing diseases to surfing the web via telepathy. Sounds like a Star Trek script, doesn't it? But in 1904, a British guy named J.C. Brown swore he found the entrance. Brown was a gold prospector, but instead of gold, he found a tunnel 11 miles long going straight into the mountain's gut. At the end of the tunnel was an underground village filled with gold tablets, copper statues, and most importantly, skeletons. Skeletons up to 3 meters tall. What did Brown do? He didn't take a selfie for Instagram. He sealed the cave entrance, spent 30 years assembling an expedition team of 80 people. The departure date was set, June 19th, 1 p.m. People had sold their houses and property to follow him. And guess what? J.C. Brown never showed up. He evaporated, disappeared, along with the secret of the entrance to Telos. Was he silenced, or was he just the greatest con artist of the 20th century? The story of J.C. Brown might be gossip, but let's leave dreamy America for a colder reality. Let's go to India. The Tamil people here don't need Zorro to tell stories. They have their own history of Kumari Kandam, a vast continent that once connected India and Madagascar, where Pandian kings ruled before being swallowed by the sea. For centuries, Western science smirked, just legends again. But in 2013, that smirk was wiped off. At the bottom of the Indian Ocean, right where the legends of Lemuria and Kumari Kandam pointed, geologists found something that shouldn't exist: ancient zircon crystals. They were too old to belong to the young volcanic islands there. They were fragments of an ancient continent that sank millions of years ago. They named it Mauritius. Mauritius is real. It is not the continent of egg-laying giants, but it is a lost continent. And it is not alone. Look at Dwarka in India, the golden city of Lord Krishna, once considered a myth until divers found it underwater. Look at the waters off Cuba, where sonar picked up geometric structures at a depth of 600 meters, a drowned city that science still dares not admit. So finally, what is Lemuria? Is it the home of three-eyed egg-laying creatures? Probably not, unless Madame Blavatsky knew something we don't. Is it a crystal city under Mount Shasta? Maybe that's just the dream of those drunk on altitude. But the core of the story, about brilliant civilizations wiped out by rising seas, by natural disasters, that is not a myth. That is a memory. It is humanity's genetic haunting of a glorious past that was submerged. Take a deep breath, deeper. Hold it. Now imagine you are sinking. 10 meters, 20 meters, 30 meters beneath the cold water off the coast of Japan. The sunlight here is just weak rays dancing on silent blocks of stone. What do you see? A pile of random rocks? That is what mainstream geologists want you to believe. They want you to look at the massive architecture in Yonaguni and nod obediently. Ah, just collapsed sandstone. But look closer. Don't look with the eyes of a naive tourist. Look with the eyes of a detective. Nature, my dear friend, is a chaotic artist. She likes curves, random erosion, distorted shapes. Nature does not suffer from obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD. Nature does not hold a ruler and chisel to carve terraced fields as chillingly symmetrical as these. Look at those parallel steps. They rise with a precision measured by mathematics. And over there, a pyramid-shaped platform, perfectly aligned with east, west, north, and south. Are you going to tell me that ocean currents and random erosion brought a compass along to do that work? Ridiculous. The deeper divers go, the more this natural structure behaves like a complex architectural blueprint. Boulevards wide enough for ceremonial processions, drainage channels carved delicately to direct flow, and massive retaining walls. All scream the three words archaeology fears most: planning, engineering, purpose. But Yonaguni is not alone in its silence. Cross the ocean to the coast of India. Here, another shadow is cast long across the seabed, a shadow named Dwarka. For centuries, Dwarka only existed in the yellowed pages of ancient Sanskrit texts. Western scholars with their noses stuck in the air scoffed and pronounced, just religious myth, a fairy tale to lull children to sleep. Well, that arrogance shattered when sonar teams swept through the murky waters near Gujarat. You know what they found? Not sea monsters, nor pirate treasure. They found the truth. A network of walls and foundations 5 meters wide appeared on the radar screen. Carved stone pillars lay scattered, ruined like the ribs of a giant dead monster. Sculpted artifacts lay half buried in thick silt. And the irony? The geometry of this city matches down to the millimeter the mythical descriptions written thousands of years ago. The ancient writers weren't writing poetry. They were reporting. They told of a magnificent port city, beautiful enough to make gods jealous, that disappeared under the sea in a single night. That is not a literary metaphor, ladies and gentlemen. That is a horrific memory. We aren't stopping yet. Let's head south, to the Sunda Shelf. If you drain the seawater in the area between Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand, you will see a vast land that was once a fertile paradise before the last ice age ended. Sonar scanners here have painted a picture that no one dares hang in a museum. Straight canals, rectangular depressions that are too perfect, raised causeways, harbor basins, and massive foundations strong enough to support great architectural structures. But do you see them on the news tonight? No. Do you see them in your child's history textbook? Definitely not. What does mainstream archaeology call them? Geological oddities. Or more simply, they choose to blindfold themselves and pretend they don't exist. How convenient to ignore evidence that threatens to smash the precious timeline they have painstakingly built. This pattern repeats globally like a crack spreading across a pane of glass. Off the coast of Cuba, giant stone blocks arranged like a chessboard like the streets of New York. Near the Bahamas, the Bimini Road lies there, rocks so uniform that natural erosion becomes a ludicrous explanation. And scattered across continental shelves, poor fishermen occasionally pull up strange carved stone pieces in their nets. Lonely fragments of cities long drowned, lying shivering on wet decks. We are standing before a global crime scene, but the police, or in this case, the historians, refuse to perform the autopsy. These ruins are not just rocks, they are tombs. And they often say, the dead tell no tales. But I say, if you listen closely enough, their echoes are still screaming under the water pressure. The question is no longer, are they real? The truth is lying right there, cold and hard. The real question, the question that will make you lose sleep tonight, is, why are all these civilizations at the bottom of the sea? And more importantly, why are the stories of their demise so strangely identical in every corner of the world? If a coincidence happens once, I'll call it luck. Twice? Maybe random. But when a coincidence happens dozens, hundreds of times across the planet, it is no longer random. It is a pattern. And this pattern tells a terrifying story. What makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up isn't the rocks at the bottom of the sea. It is that their locations match chillingly perfectly with the flood stories of indigenous cultures. Sit down by the campfire of the indigenous Australians. They don't tell fairy tales for entertainment. They pass down precise memories of lush coastal lands that were swallowed by big water. Ask the master Polynesian navigators. In their wayfinding songs, they sing of island chains that were once rest stops, now completely vanished beneath the deep blue waves. And in Southeast Asia, tribes tell of desperate journeys fleeing deep inland, racing against sea levels rising higher than any tide their ancestors had ever seen. We, arrogant modern humans, often call that mythology. We pat them on the back and say, "That's just a metaphor, old friend." Wrong, fatally wrong. That is not literary fabrication. That is historical memory. Those are news reports stored, not on hard drives, but in speech, passed through thousands of years of trauma. But here is the real question, the question that will gnaw at your mind. Not how they built those cities, but why did we forget them so completely? Think about this. A city can be flooded. New Orleans was. Venice is sinking. But knowledge? Knowledge doesn't drown that easily. People migrate, they carry technology, language, culture. They tell the story of the old city. But here? Emptiness. Absolute silence. To completely wipe out traces of these civilizations, to turn them from history into vague legend, requires something stronger than rising water. Something that targets not just bricks and stones, but targets the very software of humanity. It targets the web of culture, language, and continuity. A disaster large enough to force humanity to press the reset button. A reboot from the ashes, stripped of all memory, shivering and naked like newborns in a hostile world. And if you think the past is buried, look at how the present is trying to keep it in the grave. Another disturbing pattern appears the moment we start asking questions. You find a promising underwater ruin? Great. But watch what happens next. Suddenly, that dive site is closed. No explanation. That is the most common answer. You apply for a research permit? Your application gets lost in a bureaucratic maze with no exit. Detailed sonar data suddenly evaporates behind thick government walls. The reasons they give change faster than the weather. Today, it's coral environment protection. Tomorrow, it's maritime safety. The day after, it's military surveillance zone. Sounds noble, right? But the final effect is only one. Keep away. The more a site seems to challenge mainstream history, the more inaccessible it becomes. Why are they so afraid of inanimate stones? Because these drowned kingdoms are not just ruins. They are ticking time bombs threatening to collapse the foundation of the house named human history. If these cities existed before the last cataclysm, if they stood tall before the world submerged the coastlines, then our textbooks are dead wrong. Human civilization is not a straight line progressing for 12,000 years. No, my friend. It is much more ancient. It is a circle. scattered through many glorious rises and painful falls, like footprints fading into a dark abyss. But a killer, no matter how skilled, always leaves a trace. Not everything lost to the sea stays there. The ocean can swallow cities. Time can erode stone tablets. Governments can hide data. But there is a storage place they cannot touch. A black box recording the whole truth, not hidden in an underground bunker, but flowing right in your veins. Some traces of these ancient cultures escaped death. They survived not in stone or metal, but in the bodies of the lucky ones who escaped the water god's fury. And now, the clues lead us away from the ocean, into a microcosm even more mysterious. Your own DNA. We have searched the bottom of the sea, overturned moss-covered rocks. But the truth is, the most enduring evidence, the most undeniable proof of lost civilizations, has been right inside you since the moment you were born. It lives quietly in the human genome, a message encoded, stuffed into a bottle and thrown into the murky river of time. And we, the naive descendants, have only just fished that bottle out and learned how to read it. Your DNA is not perfect. It is a messy warehouse filled with nature's experiments, mistakes, survival, adaptation. Usually, genes tell simple stories. You are black because your ancestors lived near the equator. You tolerate lactose because your ancestors herded cattle. Logic, easy to understand. But sometimes, scientists stumble upon a piece of grit, an anomaly, a genetic marker that refuses to obey any rule of the biology textbooks. Look at this bizarre cluster of genetic traits. Where is it found? In less than 0.5% of the global population, a number too small to be random, but too consistent to be a coincidence. It appears in remote highland communities in India, in isolated coastal tribes in Southeast Asia, in the bloodlines of indigenous Australians, and all the way on the other side of the hemisphere, in the Basque people of Europe. Do they have anything in common? No, they don't share a language. They have no shared migration history in the last few thousand years. They live in completely different places, but they all carry the same mark. Like strangers at opposite ends of the world holding half of a treasure map. And even more specifically, some of these populations are living right next to the ruins of the submerged civilizations we just talked about. Coincidence? I don't think so. So, what does this genetic gift package contain? It doesn't turn you into Superman shooting lasers from your eyes, but it turns you into a supreme survival machine. First, incredible resistance to hypoxia, lack of oxygen. The lungs of these people work so efficiently that they can laugh and joke in places where normal people would faint from breathlessness. Second, extraordinary endurance under extreme physical pressure. Third, and this is the most interesting one, their brains are slightly upgraded in areas mapping spatial awareness. Pay attention to this detail. These genes don't appear sporadically. They come in a package, bundled together, as if inherited intact from some common ancestor. An ancestor who had to survive in a world so harsh they needed all these tools at once. When scientists scan the brains of people carrying this rare gene cluster, what do they see? Abnormally heightened activity in areas processing memory and environmental recognition. But don't be mistaken. This isn't the "where did I leave my car keys" kind of memory. No, this is instinctual memory. It is the ability to orient oneself in completely strange lands without a map. It is the ability to read astronomical signs like reading an open book. It is the ability to sense seasonal changes with the precision of a machine. These abilities don't guarantee you'll pass college entrance exams or become a billionaire. They are much more ancient than that. They are like an internal compass, a silent intuition always whispering in your ear. But that compass doesn't just point north or south, it points to something lost. It is the toolkit of explorers, of the great migrants. Anthropologists are scratching their heads. Some say, it must be due to living in high mountains, so the genes mutated. Dead wrong. This gene cluster appears even in people living at sea level, where air pressure is completely normal. Others say, must have interbred with extinct prehistoric humans. Doesn't fit either. The places where this gene is found show no traces of those ancient human species. So what is the answer? This pattern fits only one single scenario. It fits the survivors, communities whose ancestors had to flee from something terrifying. Rising sea levels, ash blocking the sun, or eternal darkness. People who had to carry the memory of swallowed cities, of astronomical knowledge to guide them through the pitch-black night. They survived, and they passed that code down to their descendants, to me, and maybe to you. Are you guys still there? Good, because this is where the story shifts from interesting to alarming. Listen closely. That mysterious gene cluster, that ancient survival toolkit I just mentioned, it isn't just lying there gathering dust. Geneticists are seeing a phenomenon that sends shivers down their spines. It is waking up. Epigenetic markers on these sequences are lighting up again. Why? Why would a genome that has slept for tens of thousands of years suddenly shudder awake? The answer lies outside your window. Carbon dioxide levels skyrocketing, Earth's magnetic field fluctuating, climate rhythms becoming chaotic. Your body is smarter than you think, almost as if our genome remembers something that our conscious mind has wiped clean. It recognizes the signs. It smells the scent of the past in the current air. It is a biological warning carved deep into the bone marrow. Get ready. The old pattern is returning. If the theory of prehistoric civilizations is true, if this world really resets itself over and over again like a glitchy computer, then everything becomes extremely logical. When the apocalypse knocks on the door, who are the survivors? Not the richest, nor the strongest, but the fastest adapters. They are our ancestors. Those who carried within them the genome allowing them to hold their breath longer, endure hunger and thirst better, and navigate in the dark when the stars had changed position. They escaped. They started again from zero on the ashes. Over tens of thousands of years, those superpowers faded because they were no longer needed. But they didn't disappear. They lurked, passed silently from father to son, waiting for the day the sky turns red again. You know, we humans suffer from a chronic disease. It is arrogance. We look at history as a straight line going up, from rock bangers in caves to rice farmers, and then suddenly, boom, we have smartphones and spaceships. A beautiful, neat story that strokes the ego of modern humanity, that we are the pinnacle of evolution. But what if I told you that straight line is a lie? Look at these stone giants. We call them wonders of the ancient world. Textbooks say they are the triumphs of early civilizations. But the closer you look, the more it chills your spine, because they don't look like a beginning. They look like remnants. The skeletal remains of a knowledge monster that died long ago. Let's talk about impossibility, not size. Humans are always ambitious, I admit that. But look at the precision. Here, blocks of stone weighing hundreds of tons are cut as sweetly as slicing butter. Modern engineers with laser cutters and hydraulic cranes would break out in a cold sweat trying to replicate them. Yet we believe ancient laborers did this with copper chisels and ropes? Come on, don't be so naive. Go to Egypt, the Giza Plateau. Beneath the flashy limestone shell that tourists take check-in photos with is a core that is much stranger. It aligns with true north, not magnetic north, but astronomical north, with a deviation of only a fraction of a degree. The size ratios, the geometry in the passageways, all scream a mathematical sophistication that simply should not be allowed to exist at that time. It's like finding a computer chip inside a vinyl record player. The pyramid is not the beginning of Egypt. It is an echo, a legacy that the pharaohs inherited, not created. And then, South America. Sacsayhuaman. Look at these stones. They have no standard size. Each block is unique, interlocking like a giant's insane jigsaw puzzle. No mortar, no gaps. Not even a razor blade or a sheet of paper can slide through. And here is the slap in the face to mainstream historians. The Incas themselves, the ones we credit with building it, told the Spaniards straight to their faces, "No, we didn't build it. We just found it. We inherited it." The Incas were more honest than we thought. They knew they were living on the foundations of gods. But we, with our arrogance, try to stuff these structures into the cramped timeline of accepted history. Cross the ocean to Mexico. Teotihuacan, city of the gods. Its layout reflects the orbital distances of the planets in our solar system. Do you hear me clearly? The planets. Including planets that modern telescopes only discovered much later. Its main avenue points not to the sunrise, but aligns perfectly with the setting point of a specific star in an era that passed long ago. Whoever designed this place, they didn't look at the sky with the eyes of farmers praying for rain. They looked at the universe with the eyes of master astronomers. And don't forget China. The dense hills that the government calls burial mounds. Beneath that soil are giant pyramids, scanned by radar, revealing stone chambers with the exact same precision as in Peru or Egypt. Do you see the common denominator? No matter where, Asia or Europe, America or Africa, the oldest layers are the most sophisticated. Technique does not develop over time. It goes backward. It degenerates. New structures built on top of the old ones are crooked, using small stones, using mud, using mortar, while the foundation underneath is perfect, defying time. This goes against every natural law of evolution. Technology does not naturally regress unless knowledge is lost, unless there was a horrific rupture. It seems that every civilization that rose later, Egypt, Inca, Maya, they were like survivors of a catastrophe, wandering in the ruins of a lost, transcendent world. They picked up the fragments. They mimicked what they didn't understand. They tried to rebuild memory. But memory is faint. And what they created, though great, was just a shadow of what once existed. So the question is, if our kindergarten civilizations didn't build these foundations, then who did? And more importantly, where did they go? What force was powerful enough to wipe out an entire brilliant era, leaving only rocks too heavy to destroy? Look at this. This is our legacy. If this civilization collapses tomorrow, what will we leave for the future? Plastic, metal, and useless digital ghosts lying in powered-down servers. We are a noisy and messy civilization. But the precursors, the ones who built the great foundations I just told you about in the previous part, they were different. They didn't leave trash. They left silence, and that very silence makes them terrifying. They didn't disappear slowly, they were wiped out. Let me take you on a tour of ghosts. Not one, but 6 worlds that once existed and were crushed before we could write their names in history books. First stop, Southeast Asia. Welcome to the Sunda Shelf, Sundaland. Today, it is the seabed, but tens of thousands of years ago, it was paradise, a vast land connecting islands with massive river systems and fertile plains. Geologists estimate tens of millions of people lived here. They weren't jungle people. If they mastered agriculture and navigation in this land, then when the sea rose to swallow their homeland, where did they take that memory? They scattered across the world. That is why every culture on this planet, from the Bible to the Epic of Gilgamesh, from the Maya to the tribes in Vietnam, shares the same nightmare, the Great Flood. That is not a fairy tale, my friends. That is the news report of ancient refugees. Second stop, the Sahara. Today, it is a hell of sand, but turn back time and you will see a green Sahara. Vast lakes, giraffes, hippos, and boats. Ancient rock art here depicts herders, thriving communities. And scarier yet, modern satellite radar has seen beneath that scorching sand square geometric structures, buried walls. This was once the bridge connecting Africa, the Mediterranean, and Mesopotamia, a brilliant center of civilization that was wiped out by a climatic kill switch, turning the Garden of Eden into a furnace in a geological blink of an eye. Up north, Beringia, the land connecting Siberia and Alaska. Textbooks call it a bridge for prehistoric humans to walk to America. Wrong. It wasn't a bridge. It was a homeland. During the Ice Age, this place was a massive temperate steppe. The people living here didn't just pass through, they settled, developed unique technologies to survive and manage large herds of animals. But then, the water rose. The entire Beringian civilization sank to the bottom of the freezing Bering Strait. What remains are just broken strands of DNA in the blood of northern residents today. And then we have the Indus Valley with Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa. These cities appear in the archaeological record like a miracle, suddenly complete. Checkerboard grid planning, underground drainage systems more modern than 18th century London, baked bricks standardized to the millimeter, no experimental phase, no initial clumsiness. It's as if they inherited the blueprints from someone. And when digging deep beneath the foundations of these cities, people found layers even older, stranger. They didn't invent civilization. They were trying to restore it. But the biggest mystery, the sleeping monster, lies here. The Amazon. We still think of the Amazon as wild, primeval forest. Deadly mistake. Beneath that dense canopy is the corpse of a giant 6th civilization. LiDAR scanners have stripped the truth bare. Networks of roads, canals, geometric earthworks stretching for hundreds of miles. These aren't some aboriginal villages. This is landscape engineering on an industrial scale. They knew how to make the soil fertile, terra preta. They knew how to live symbiotically with the forest. But then disease, drought, or something worse caused the forest to swallow them, turning great achievements into humus. Do you see the common point? 6 worlds, 6 civilizations, and all share the same ending, abrupt. They didn't decline slowly due to laziness or corruption. They were assassinated. Floods, meteors, volcanic eruptions, instant freezing. Earth, like a cranky landlady, periodically cleans out the tenants. What did the survivors of each cleanup do? They ran. They carried fragments of knowledge, mathematics, astronomy, construction techniques, and tried to teach the remaining savages. They became the gods of legend. They rebuilt what they could remember. They mimicked what they had lost. 6 times the world has reached complexity. 6 times the reset button has been pressed. And now, look out the window. Extreme weather, fluctuating sea levels, the Earth's crust shaking. The pattern is repeating. You think history's biggest enemy is time, right? Rain and sun, erosion, earthquakes grinding stone to dust. Dead wrong. The biggest enemy of the truth is not nature, it is humans. We just talked about civilizations wiped out by nature. But now, let's talk about another pattern. A pattern not related to geology, but reeking of fear. The fear of those in power. In the world of underground archaeology, people whisper about a phenomenon called the vanishing trace. The script is always boringly the same. An amateur diver finds an underwater city. He takes photos. He reports it. 2 days later, men in black suits come knocking. Photos confiscated for national security reasons. Dive site cordoned off. And his story becomes a joke on social media. A group of university professors finds dating for a site 10,000 years older than the textbooks say. Great. Nobel Prize awaits. But no. A week later, funding is cut. Excavation permits revoked. The dean calls them in and says, "Don't be crazy, that's just natural rock." Even museums, places supposed to be temples of knowledge, participate in this game. How many impossible artifacts are gathering dust in basements with no codes, no files, thrown into the dark just because they don't fit the story that the PhDs wrote in their dissertations? And don't tell me this is a coincidence. Coincidence doesn't happen on a global scale like that. From Egypt to Peru, from China to America. The more sophisticated the artifact, the higher the technology, the faster it evaporates. Why? Why do they have to do that? Hypothesis 1. The ego of academia. Imagine you've built a 40-year career on the theory that civilization is only 5,000 years old. If someone proves you wrong, textbooks have to be rewritten. Your degree becomes scrap paper. It's easier to bury the truth than to admit you were wrong your whole life. The inertia of the intellectual crowd is a terrifying monster. Hypothesis 2. National interest. Where are these ancient ruins usually located? Geological hotspots, places rich in minerals, or strategic coastal positions? If ancient technology involved energy, magnetic fields, or weapons, do you think governments would share it with the public? Dream on. They will stamp top secret, put up barbed wire, and study it in secret to gain a military advantage. But there is a third hypothesis, a hypothesis that chills me the most. That is concealment, for humanitarian purposes. Remember what we said in the previous part. 6 civilizations, 6 collapses, sudden, devastating. If the public knew that our modern world is not unique, not eternal, but just the next victim on Earth's death list, what would happen? Panic, economic collapse, religion overturned. Those in power might be playing nanny. They hide the skeletons in the closet so the children, us, can sleep soundly. They want to protect this fragile stability. They are buying time for us, or for themselves. The scariest thing is the speed of their reaction. They act before the discovery is announced. Sonar data is flagged red before divers get in the water. Satellite records are deleted as soon as the algorithm detects anomalies. What does this mean? It means they already know. There is a group of people, an organization, or a lineage that has held this secret for a long time. They aren't looking for answers. They are guarding them. They know that the past contains not just knowledge, it contains danger. Something that killed the gods of old and might be coming back for us. If this silence is a tradition thousands of years old, then the final question is no longer, what are they hiding? But why now? Why are the signs of collapse starting to appear intensely right at this moment? If the cycle is real, how much time do we have left? And most importantly, when disaster strikes, who will be chosen to go into the bunker, and who will be left on the surface to become fossils for the next civilization? Look at the world we live in. Beautiful, isn't it? The pinnacle of humanity. Electrification, the internet, artificial intelligence, and skyscrapers of glass and steel. We are proud to be the conquerors of nature. We think that this time will be different. But standing here, I don't see eternity. I see fragility. If you pull the plug, this city dies in a week. If the supply chain breaks, we eat each other in a month. Compared to the 1,000-ton stones at Giza or Peru, our civilization is just a castle built of toothpicks and superglue. We have traveled a long journey, from impossible stones to forgotten maps and the suspicious silence of the ruling class. All point to a single truth, a truth you can feel in your marrow every time you read the news about recent disasters. The pattern is repeating. The 6 civilizations before us didn't end because they were tired of living. They ended because Earth decided it was closing time. Every collapse in the past coincided with extreme geological and cosmic fluctuations, magnetic pole reversals, shifts in axial tilt, impacts from the cosmos. Look at the current signs. Earth's magnetic field is moving faster than ever before. The weather is going berserk. Telluric currents underground are shifting. Earth is not a dead rock. It is a sleeping beast, and it is stirring to wake up. The ancient builders knew this. They placed observatories and pyramids along these fault lines and energy points, not to stargaze for fun, but to monitor the pulse of the monster. They wanted to know when it would wake up again. There is a theory called cyclical cataclysm, that the universe operates according to a rhythm: spring, summer, autumn, and a harsh winter that wipes everything out to start over. We, modern civilization, are perhaps living in the most brilliant days of late autumn. We are drunk on technology, on war, on division, forgetting to look up at the sky. If those who came before, those who could cut stone with sound, those who drew star maps more accurately than NASA, could not survive that winter, then what chance do you think our iPhones and electric cars have? But this is not a doomsday prophecy to scare you. This is an explanation for our existence. Why did ancient survivors try to build those giant, eternally durable stone structures? Why did they carve messages into the hardest granite? They didn't build them for themselves. They built them for us. They were trying to send a message across time, a warning echoing from the past to the future. We were here. We reached the peak, and then the sky fell. Prepare yourselves. Those pyramids, those stone walls, they are the black boxes of a plane after a crash, and we are the foolish investigators deliberately ignoring the data inside that box. The final question is not, will it happen? The question is, when the wheel of history crushes this civilization, when iron rusts and plastic decomposes, what will we leave behind? Will there be a Zorro 10,000 years from now standing before the ruins of the Statue of Liberty wondering, who were they? And why did they disappear? Or will we be the first civilization to break the curse? Look down at your feet. No, not at your expensive sneakers or the shiny ceramic tile floor in your living room. Look deeper than that. Through the layer of reinforced concrete, through the foul-smelling sewer system, through the forgotten layers of sediment. Do you see anything? White bones, ruins, fragments of 6 worlds that once considered themselves eternal until they were wiped out. If those 6 worlds are dusty, closed chapters, and this flashy, noisy world we, modern humanity, live in is the 7th chapter, then I have bad news for you. We are not at the first lines of the fairy tale. We are standing on the very last page. The finger of destiny is licking itself, preparing to turn to the next page. Welcome to the threshold of the 8th civilization. It is not a distant sci-fi movie. It is breathing, squirming right in the cracks of the present, right now. Earth. Oh, our dear Mother Nature. She never changes her temperament abruptly without warning. She is a polite assassin. She always sends a business card before striking. At first it's subtle signs like a whisper. A slight shift in the magnetic field making your compass drift a bit. A summer hotter than usual. A storm arriving a few weeks early. We shrug. Must just be bad luck this year. But now, that whisper has turned into a scream that only the deaf, or those pretending to be deaf, fail to hear. Look at the data that scientists are holding with trembling hands. Earth's magnetic field is drifting and weakening, like a bulletproof shield thinning out before the gun barrel of the universe. Ocean currents, the arteries stabilizing the climate for millennia, are clogging. The ocean is rising, lapping at bustling coastal cities. These signs, they are terrifyingly familiar. Why? Because they are the very ghosts that appeared right before the 6 previous civilizations collapsed. Carbon dioxide, the name we hear until our ears are worn out on the news. Current levels have exceeded anything recorded in human history. But make no mistake, this isn't something happening centuries from now. It is happening by the decade. Ice sheets are cracking faster than you scroll through TikTok. Entire ecosystems are migrating, changing territory within a single lifetime. Imagine the forest behind your house disappearing and being replaced by a desert, right before you even pay off your mortgage. We, wise modern humans, like to label everything. We call these phenomena environmental issues. We argue about scientific models. We turn it into a weapon in political debates. This side blames that side. This country criticizes that country. So naive. Viewed through the lens of forgotten cycles, this is not politics. This is the mechanism of an ancient clock striking 0 hour. If previous civilizations were wiped out by nature's individual toys, floods drowning everything, yes. Volcanic ash blocking the sun, yes. Ice ages freezing life, yes. Or heat scorching all things, also yes. But our era? Oh, we are special. We received a full, all-inclusive combo. Sea levels are lurking at the door, waiting to swallow coastal cities, where the majority of humanity is crammed together. Volcanic belts, after a long sleep, are stirring awake like hungry dragons. Heat waves break records year after year, turning summer into an oven. These signs don't guarantee an apocalypse tomorrow, but they mirror the script of previous collapses with a precision that makes one's blood run cold. The world is tilting, foundations are shaking. But while we are busy looking up at the sky, fearing the storm, something else is rising. Not from nature, but from inside us. A silent mutation in the human bloodline, preparing for the 8th era. While the outside world is burning, flooding, and cracking open, something more interesting is happening right beneath your skin. We usually think of doomsday as an external event, a meteor, a tsunami, or a nuclear button. But have you ever thought that your body, this clumsy biological machine, already knows it's about to happen? Science calls it a rare genetic cluster. I call it the emergency backup system. In human populations scattered across the globe, geneticists are finding strange things, not diseases, but an awakening, a legacy lying dormant in the blood of the survivors from previous cycles. Epigenetic studies are showing that metabolic pathways in some people's bodies are changing. They are becoming more efficient, more resilient, as if the body is preparing itself for a time of food scarcity and harsh climate. And look at the kids. Younger generations are showing superior neurological signs regarding spatial memory and environmental awareness. It's as if they have GPS built into their brains. Why? To find their way in a world where the map is about to be erased. It's as if the descendants of ancient people are sensing the wheel of time turning back to its old position, not through thought, but through instinct, a fear or an excitement lying deeper than consciousness. But the irony of the universe doesn't stop at biology. Look around. We are proud of our technology. We beat our chests claiming to be the greatest inventors in history. Really? Or are we just amnesiacs relearning old lessons? We rediscover solar energy. Right at the moment, archaeological evidence suggests that previous civilizations also harnessed the power of this star before they vanished. We are stumbling into the era of biocomputing. Sound familiar? It echoes the mysterious earthworks in the Amazon, which once shaped an entire ecosystem in ways we are only beginning to understand. And then, artificial intelligence. We unlock this demon, or this god, with the naive belief that we are the first. But geological records and ancient myths scattered everywhere mention self-operating machines, thinking iron men. There is a possibility, a terrifying but logical possibility. Innovation in this age is not invention, it is memory. We aren't creating the new. We are remembering how to operate old toys buried under the dust of time. Look at how we live. Cities rise higher, piercing the sky. Connection networks become denser. Information flows across continents as fast as a thought. Humanity is reorganizing itself into a unified block, more tightly connected than ever. We call it progress. I call it a symptom. Like a colony of ants frantically reinforcing the nest before a big storm, or a creature channeling all reserved energy for one final push. Every civilization in the past rose most brilliantly, most rapidly, right near its end. It is like a candle flaring up strongest before fading out. Driven by invisible forces it does not understand, a frantic urge to reach a certain threshold before the turning point hits and kills the lights. The eighth civilization is forming, not far away, but right in these skyscrapers, in these lines of AI code, and in the very blood flowing through your veins. But the important question isn't, is it coming? It is already coming. The real question, the question worth billions of lives, is, will the ending be different this time? The million-dollar question isn't whether the eighth civilization will rise or not. As we have seen, it is banging on the door demanding to get in. The real question, the question that keeps those in power awake at night is, will it survive? Or will it be another drowned corpse in the river of time? Every previous cycle ended like a movie cut off right at the best part. Sudden, devastating. Knowledge torn apart and scattered like ash in the wind. Magnificent cities swallowed by the ocean, belching up a few air bubbles, then sinking into oblivion. All that remained were fragments, disjointed stories whispered by mad survivors, carrying memory in their blood and terror in their eyes. Our cycle could have the exact same ending unless we do something different. You see, we possess a superpower that no previous civilization had. Not the iPhone, not the nuclear bomb. It is the ability to see the pattern. We can look back through geological time. We can use ground-penetrating scanners to pry into the remnants of dead worlds. We are the first to realize a bitter truth. Collapse is not random. It is not God throwing dice. It has a rhythm. It has a cycle. It is like the heartbeat of a sleeping monster, and we are right at the final beat before it wakes up. The eighth civilization has the chance to be the first to break this curse. The first not just to stare wide-eyed as disaster strikes, but the first to predict the turning point. Instead of fear, we need awareness. Instead of letting the Library of Alexandria burn down once again, we must protect our knowledge, store it in DNA and quartz glass, or carve it onto the moon if necessary. But to do that, we need something harder to find than vibranium: humility. The eighth civilization must be built on the understanding that, on this earth, nothing is eternal, except change itself. We must accept swallowing this bitter pill, that we are not the pinnacle of evolution. We are not the universe's only spoiled children. We are standing on a colossal graveyard. Beneath your house's foundation are the ruins of many worlds. We inherit both the great victories and the stupid mistakes of those forgotten eras. We are like new tenants moving into a mansion where 7 previous owners died sudden deaths. If we want to survive, it's best to find out how they died, rather than repainting the walls and pretending nothing happened. Humanity must move forward with the curiosity of a child and the courage of a warrior. But most importantly, we must be ready to rewrite everything we think we know. Textbooks could be wrong. Historical timelines could be missing thousands of years. Our origins could be more complex than Darwin or the Bible ever described. The eighth civilization will not be built with reinforced concrete. It will be built with truth, a naked truth that we are just one link in an infinitely long chain. If we succeed, we will create an era unlike any era before, an era that knows who it is. And if we fail, well, prepare yourself to become a wafer-thin layer of sediment in the earth, waiting for some Zorro of the ninth civilization to dig up 10,000 years from now. Finally, we have reached the end of the truth. A truth brutally simple. 2 roads are spreading out before our eyes. If we succeed, if we truly break this damn loop, the eighth civilization will rise brilliantly. Not as a flawed copy of the past, but as a unique era. The first era to know where it is going. The first era not to blindly rush into the abyss. But if we fail, you, me, and everything we cherish will become another layer of silence in the earth. A thin streak of black coal sandwiched between geological layers. We will become a whisper in the myths of those who come after. Imagine 5,000 years from now, an archaeologist digging up your smartphone and wondering, which god was this strange black mirror used to worship? We will be another lost world, waiting to be rediscovered, misunderstood, and then forgotten again. The cycle is returning. One doesn't need to be a prophet to see that. The signs are here, plainly visible, screaming in our faces every day on the news. But listen, the future is not defined by those who bury their heads in the sand. The future does not belong to those who deny the past, those who believe history is a straight line going up forever. No. The future belongs to those who dare to see it clearly. Belongs to people like you. You are here, listening to this crazy story, because you feel it, don't you? A strange resonance in your chest, a call from recessive genes awakening in your blood. We don't need to fear the dark. We just need to light a lamp bright enough to see the traps our ancestors once fell into.